Hi there, this is Andrea Maury of Drea Renee Knits, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to get started with an applied double knit button band. So I've already done the side of my cardigan that's going to get the buttons, and now I need to start my other side that'll get my buttonholes. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to show you how I'm going to cast on my stitches to then get started with knitting my button band. It creates this really beautiful vertical button band that's really polished and just attaches itself as we go so we avoid any seaming. So the first step is going to be picking up stitches, which I've already done, and I'm not going to show in this tutorial, but you're just going to pick up your stitches in the traditional way. There's lots of tutorials out there if you need help with that step, but we're going to jump right into the casting on of stitches so that we can start working back and forth. So I picked up my stitches starting in the lower right hand corner, got up to here, and then I needed to break my yarn because we need to then cast on our new stitches at that same corner that we started with. So I want my wrong side facing me, so the inside of my cardigan, and I'm going to take my ball of yarn here. And you will need to pick up whatever amount of stitches is in your pattern. I'm going to pick up a little over 20, so I'm just getting enough yarn for that. If you have done a tubular bind off, what we're about to do is basically that, your tubular bind off. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see better. So I am starting by holding the working yarn with the tail end over my thumb, and then the ball end of my yarn is going over my forefinger, and I'm just holding them into this triangle shape with my lower fingers. And I'm going to start with a little dip motion. So I'm going to place my needle tip on top of my triangle here, and then I just dip it in like a chip into dip, and I'm just doing that little swoop method, and that's my first stitch. I'm going to do it one more time slowly so you can see without my sweater behind it. So I'm placing my needle on top, and I'm dipping and rotating around, and that's my first stitch, which is a purl stitch. All right, and now I'm going to need a knit stitch. So I'm going to go under my thumb yarn, over my pointer finger yarn, and then rotate my needle to the front. And that is my knit stitch. For a purl, we're going to go under the pointer finger, over the thumb, and rotate. And there's a purl. So I need to go back and forth alternating those two. So we're gonna go under the thumb, over the finger for a knit, under the finger, over the thumb for a purl. Under the thumb, over the finger for a knit, under the finger, over the thumb for a purl. Under the thumb, over the finger for a knit, under the finger, over the thumb for a purl. Under the thumb, over the finger for a knit, under the finger, over the thumb for a purl. So again, we're going to keep doing this till we have the right amount of stitches. I need about 10 more. So under, over, knit, under, over, purl. Under the thumb, over the finger, knit, under the finger, over the thumb, purl. Under the thumb, over the finger, knit, under the finger, over the thumb, purl. Under, over, knit, under, over, purl. Just working that same motion from front to back and back to front until we have the correct amount of stitches. So let's count that again. Do you see how when I'm going to check, I'm pinching the base? This creates this really beautiful right into your knits and purls kind of cast on that just flows over the edge, but it's not super stable while you're doing it. So I just pinch with my thumb and forefinger to hold everything steady while I count. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Ooh, I have extra. So I am going to take my last 2 off because I only need 21. Okay. And I'm going to pinch again and just make sure. It's always good to make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21. Perfect. So that's how many I'm going to use today. And I started with a purl and I ended with a purl, because when I turn this back to my right side, that means I'm going to start and end with a knit on my right side, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to grab the other end of my needle here. And what we want to do to stabilize this last stitch is twirl that yarn again, just to lock it all in place. And it's going to make it a lot easier to start working your rows with those yarns twisted around each other. All right, so make sure you begin knitting with your end of your yarn that is connected to your yarn ball, not your yarn tail. So for me, that is this one right here. And then I just kind of hold that tail to stabilize. And this first row, you're going to notice that your knit stitches are twisted. So my back leg is further forward than my front leg. So to fix that, we just go ahead and just on this first setup row, we're going to knit those stitches through the back loop. So we knit one, and then our purl stitches, we just slip with the yarn in front. Return the yarn to the back and knit one. Bring the yarn to the front, slip the stitch purlwise, and knit the stitch through the back. Bring the yarn to the front, slip the stitch purlwise, knit through the back. And it doesn't matter if you knit continental or English. Right now I'm doing continental. I'll demonstrate a few stitches English, but however you knit is fine. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, slip that stitch purlwise, knit one through the back. Bring my yarn to the front, slip the stitch purlwise, knit one through the back. Bring my yarn to the front, slip one purlwise. And what I mean by that too is I'm inserting my needle as if to purl, and then I just move it from my left hand needle to the right, so I don't twist that stitch. Now I'm knitting one through the back, and we are going to continue this until we get to that first stitch we cast on with that dip motion, and we are going to work that with our first picked up stitch of our button band. And by working those two stitches together, we begin to join this button band to the body of the cardigan. So I'm to my last two stitches here, so I'm going to slip this one. And now I'm going to knit that first cast on stitch together with the first picked up stitch of the cardigan. So I'm just going to knit them together, regardless of if you knit English or continental. English, it would look like this. Continental, it looks like this. So either way, it's the same deal. Knitting those two together, and then I turn my work. So I'm going to show this whole next row and the one following continental, and then I'll demonstrate 2 more rows English. That way you can see a couple uninterrupted rows in the way you knit. Keep my little yarn strands untangled here. All right, so again, this one's going to be all continental. So that very first stitch, I slip, holding the yarn to the front. And I like to give a little extra tug on that edge stitch. All right, now I am going to knit, slip one with yarn in front. Knit, slip one with yarn in front. Knit, slip one with yarn in front. So what you're going to quickly realize is with this double knit button band, you never have to purl. We just slip our purl stitches with the yarn in front, and then we knit the knit stitches. And that's what creates that really polished double knit band. We're going to do this all the way to the last stitch, which I'm going to slip with the yarn in front and turn my work. This is the last row. I'll do continental and then I'll show it English style. So I knit one, slip one with yarn in front. Knit one, slip one with yarn in front. Knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip. Every time I'm moving my yarn to the front to slip my stitch and then returning it to the back to knit the next stitch. All the way to the last stitch of my button band. And then I'm going to knit my last stitch of my button band with this next stitch that I had picked up from the body of the cardigan, and I'm knitting them together through the back loop. And then I turn my work. So now I'm going to show the next 2 rows English style. So, inserting my needle as if to purl and slipping my stitch without working it. My working yarn's in front, and again I like to give that little extra tug on the edge stitch after turning. And then I'm going to knit one, return my work to the front, slip one, return my working yarn to the back. Knit one, slip one with yarn in front. 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 All the way to the end. And after I demonstrate this next row, I'll show you what this looks like so you can get a better visual of how we're slowly building up the button band while attaching it to the body of the cardigan. Actually, I'll show that part right now. It's a little easier to see on the right hand side. So, do you see how this is going to be? Let me move my needle a little. This is going to be horizontal, and we're knitting back and forth, eating up one stitch at a time as we create it. So let's go ahead and do this last row of the demonstration English style. Knit one, slip one with yarn in front. Knit one, slip one with yarn in front. And it's really important that as you're slipping that stitch with the yarn in front, you always make sure to bring the yarn forward between the needle tips, slip your stitch, and return the yarn between the needle tips. So what we're doing is we're keeping this yarn in front at the base of the stitch. We don't want to accidentally ever bring it over the top of our needle, because that would give you an unintended yarn over. So always bringing it through the needle tips. All right, I'm gonna do this right up to the last stitch of the button band. And I'll demonstrate one more time doing that knit two together through the back loops. It's pretty easy to tell when you've reached the last stitch of the button band because there's a little gap. But if you ever have trouble seeing that, you could place a stitch marker right here, and then it's extra obvious. All right, so now I'm going to take last stitch of the button band, next stitch of the picked up stitches on the cardigan, knit them together through the back loops, and then turn my work. And that's it. I'm gonna keep doing that all the way up, creating my button band, adding my buttonholes where I need them. And there you go. Happy knitting.